The fortress had stood for 3,000 years. It was carved into black cliffs that rose like broken teeth against a red sky. The people had built it long ago, back when their empire stretched across half the galaxy. They were a proud species, tall, strong. Each warrior had 4 arms and skin like rough stone. Their ancestors had conquered worlds without number. But now, for the first time in their long history, they were the ones trapped. Commander stood on the high walls and watched death creep closer. The Dominion army had surrounded the fortress 60 days ago. Their siege machines moved slowly across the ash wastes, black shapes against the dust. Thousands of enemy soldiers waited in camps that circled the mountain like a noose. Inside the fortress, 3,000 civilians huddled in the deep chambers. Women, children, the old and the sick. They had run here when the invasion came, believing the ancient walls would protect them. Now those walls had become their prison. 4 eyes scanned the horizon. The water was almost gone. They had started burning their dead because there was no wood left for fires. Every day, more people fell sick. Every night, more children cried from hunger. His lieutenant climbed the stairs to join him. She was young for her rank, but war made everyone old quickly. Her lower left arm was wrapped in bandages from yesterday's fighting. "The engineers have failed again," she said. Her voice was flat, tired. Did not turn around. He knew what she meant. Deep inside the mountain there was an ancient gate. It had been built by the first to settle this world, back when they still feared what might come from the stars. The gate led to a tunnel that went through the mountain and came out on the other side, far from the Dominion siege lines. If they could open it, they could escape. They could save everyone. But the gate had not been opened in 500 years. Its mechanisms had frozen solid. The great counterweights that were meant to lift it had turned to stone. The chains had rusted into single pieces of useless metal. For 6 hours, strongest warriors had tried everything. They had pulled. They had pushed. They had used every machine they could find. 40 of the mightiest soldiers had thrown their bodies against the manual release system until bones broke and muscles tore. The gate had not moved at all, not even a little bit. "How many injured?" asked. 12 cannot walk. 3 may never use their arms again." Paused. "The gate weighs 12,000. Even if we had 100 warriors, I do not think we could move it." Finally turned to look at her. His face was hard, but his eyes held something close to despair. "Then we die here, all of us." "Perhaps not." His voice dropped low. "We could ask the human." The words hung in the air between them. Felt his mandibles click together in disgust. The human girl had arrived 3 days after the siege began. Her escape pod had crashed in the northern valley, somehow slipping past the Dominion patrols. When the scouts brought her in, had thought she was a child. She was so small, so soft. Her skin was pink and thin, and it turned purple when it was touched too hard. Her name was Myra. She said she was 19 years old, which meant she was an adult by her species counting. She came from a human colony that the Dominion had destroyed. She was the only survivor of her family. The medics had called her survival a miracle. Her pod had hit the ground hard enough to kill most species. She had walked away with only cuts and bruises. "She weighs less than my arm," said. "Her bones are like hollow sticks. What could she possibly do that 40 warriors cannot?" Was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was strange, almost afraid. "I have been watching her, Commander. There is something wrong with humans. Wrong in a way I cannot explain." "Wrong how?" "Yesterday I saw her in the refugee quarters. She was lying on the ground, lifting her body up and down using only her arms, over and over again, for no reason," shook her head. "I asked her what she was doing. She said she was exercising. She said she did it for fun." Stared at her. "That makes no sense." "I know, and there is more." Stepped closer, lowering her voice even further. "I have seen her jump. Commander, she can jump higher than her own height, without trying, without even thinking about it. and she can do it over and over again without getting tired. That is impossible. I saw it with my own eyes, 4 of them. His face was troubled. The human scientists in the medical bay tried to explain it to me. They said humans come from a world called Earth, a heavy world, a world where the gravity is almost 3 times stronger than here. Felt something cold move through his chest. He had heard stories about high-gravity species. They were rare. Most life could not survive on such worlds. The constant crushing weight destroyed bones and hearts and minds. But humans had survived it. Somehow, impossibly, they had not just survived it. They had thrived. Every human who has ever lived, continued, has spent their entire life fighting against a force that would kill us in days. Their bodies have grown strong in ways we cannot imagine. Their muscles, their bones, their hearts, everything about them has been built to resist being crushed. She looked at with all 4 of her eyes. And now she is here, on a world where gravity is less than half of what she is used to. Commander, I do not think we understand what that means. I do not think we understand what she can do. Looked out at the siege lines again. The Dominion machines were getting closer. By tomorrow, they would be in range to breach the walls. After that, there would be no hope at all. 3,000 lives, women and children and elders, all of them depending on him. He thought about the gate, 12,000 of ancient metal that his strongest warriors could not move. He thought about the tiny human girl with her soft skin and her hollow bones and her strange habit of lifting herself up and down for fun. It was madness, it was desperate, it was the only chance they had. "Bring her to me," he said. Myra was doing push-ups when they came for her. She had found a quiet corner in the refugee quarters, away from the frightened families and crying children. They watched her with wide eyes as she lowered herself to the ground and pushed herself back up again. Down, up, down, up. Her arms burned in a good way. Sweat dripped from her forehead onto the stone floor. She had been doing this for 20 minutes. It helped her think. It helped her forget. Back home on Colony, she used to run 5 kilometers every morning before school. Her mother would make breakfast while her father read the news on his tablet. Her little brother would complain about homework. Normal things, simple things, things she would never have again. The Dominion had come without warning, ships falling from the sky like burning rain. Her father had pushed her into the escape pod and told her to be brave. That was the last thing he ever said to her. Be brave. Myra pushed herself up one more time and held the position, arms straight, body flat like a board. She counted to 30 in her head. Then she let herself drop and rolled onto her back, breathing hard. The ceiling was far above her, carved from black stone. Strange symbols covered the walls. Everything in this fortress was huge, built for people twice her size. She felt like a child in a giant's house. She heard footsteps, heavy ones, 4 feet hitting the ground in a rhythm that still sounded strange to her ears. Myra sat up and saw 2 approaching. She recognized them. The tall one with the face was Commander, the leader of the soldiers. The other was his lieutenant with her bandaged arm. They stopped a few meters away and looked down at her. Myra wiped sweat from her face and smiled. You need something. Commander's face was hard to read. They did not have expressions like humans did, but Myra had learned to watch their eyes. Right now, his eyes looked desperate. We have a problem, he said. His voice was deep and rough. The fortress is going to fall, perhaps tomorrow, perhaps the day after. When it does, everyone inside will die. Myra's smile faded. She stood up slowly. There is a gate, continued. An old gate deep in the mountain. It leads to a tunnel that comes out on the other side, far from the enemy. If we can open it, we can save the civilians. We can save everyone. Okay, Myra said, so open it. We cannot. His mandibles clicked together. It was a sound they made when they were frustrated. The gate has been sealed for 500 years. The machines that open it are broken. My warriors have tried for 6 hours to move it by hand. They cannot. Myra frowned. How heavy is it? The mechanism requires lifting approximately 12,000. Myra did the math in her head. She had learned the measuring system during her first days in the fortress. 12,000 was about 4,000 kilograms, 4 metric tons. And your guys couldn't budge it, she asked, even with pulleys, levers. We tried everything. The strongest warriors in the fortress threw themselves against it until their bodies broke. Eyes were fixed on her face. It did not move at all. Myra was quiet for a moment. She looked at the commander, then at the lieutenant, then back at the commander. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. But she already knew the answer. She could see it in the way they looked at her. The same way everyone had looked at her since she arrived on this world. "What is the gravity here?" she asked. "On this planet?" "Approximately 0.4 standard," answered. Myra felt a laugh building in her chest. She tried to hold it back, but it came out anyway. A short, surprised sound that made both step back. 0.4, she repeated. "That's less than half of Earth normal." She looked down at her hands. Small hands, soft hands. Hands that had grown up learning to fight against a force these aliens could barely imagine. On Earth, everything was heavy. The air pressed down on you. Your own body wanted to drag you into the ground. Every step you took, every breath you drew, every beat of your heart was a battle against a planet that seemed determined to crush you flat. Humans did not think about it. They could not afford to think about it. It was just life. You woke up heavy. You walked heavy. You slept heavy. And if you were not strong enough to handle it, you died. Natural selection had been working on humans for millions of years. The weak ones did not survive. The strong ones passed on their strength to their children, who became even stronger. Generation after generation, humanity had been forged in a crucible of gravity that would kill most species in the galaxy. And now Myra was standing on a world where she weighed less than half of what she was used to. "Take me to your gate," she said. They walked through the corridors of the fortress. Civilians pressed against the walls to let them pass. They stared at Myra with huge eyes. She knew what they saw, a small creature, a fragile creature, something that looked like it would break if you touched it too hard. They had no idea. "I need to explain something," Myra said as they walked. "About humans, about where we come from." "Your world is heavy," said. "We know this. You know the numbers, but you do not understand what they mean." Myra stepped over a pile of rubble without slowing down. "On Earth, I weigh about 60 kilograms. That means every second of every day I am carrying 60 kilograms of weight. Just existing is exercise. Walking is exercise. Standing still is exercise." She looked up at the towering beside her. "When I jump on Earth, I can maybe get half a meter off the ground. Here, with the same effort, I can jump twice that high. When I lift something on Earth, I am lifting against a force that wants to tear my arms off. Here, that same force is barely there." They reached a set of stairs that led downward into darkness. Myra took them two at a time, bouncing lightly on her feet. "I have been on low-gravity worlds before," she said. "When I was 12, my family visited a moon station. The gravity there was even lower than here. I remember jumping and hitting my head on the ceiling. I remember picking up my father and carrying him on my shoulders like he weighed nothing." They were deep underground now. The air was cold and smelled like old metal. "Every human you will ever meet is the same," Myra said. "We do not have claws or fangs or armor. We do not have poison or speed or size. But we have something else. Something we do not even realize we have until we leave our home world." They turned a corner and she saw light ahead. She could hear voices, groaning, the sound of people in pain. "We have strength," she said. "Strength that was beaten into our species by a billion years of gravity trying to kill us. And we survived. We survived and we got strong, and now we are out here in the galaxy where everything is light and easy and soft." She smiled. It was not a nice smile. "You want me to open your gate? I will open your gate. Just show me where it is." The gate chamber was a place of failure and pain. Myra stopped at the entrance and looked at what waited inside. The room was huge, carved from the black stone of the mountain. Torches burned along the walls, throwing orange light across a scene of defeat. Warriors lay everywhere. Some sat against the walls holding broken arms. Others lay flat on the ground, too exhausted to move. Medics moved between them, wrapping wounds and giving water. The air smelled like blood and sweat and despair. In the center of it all stood the gate. It was massive. Myra had to tilt her head back to see the top of it. The metal was ancient, covered in green rust and strange symbols. Chains hung from its sides, snapped like old string. The hinges were as big as her entire body. For 500 years, this gate had not moved. It had become part of the mountain itself. 40 of the strongest in the fortress had tried to open it. They had used every tool, every machine, every trick they knew. They had pulled until their muscles tore. They had pushed until their bones cracked. 6 hours of effort from warriors who could lift weights that would crush a human flat. The gate had not moved, even 1 finger's width. Now those warriors looked up as Myra walked past them. Their 4 eyes followed her, filled with confusion and doubt in something that might have been hope. She was so small compared to them. Her head barely reached their chests. Her arms were thin. Her legs were thin. Everything about her looked weak and breakable. But she walked like she owned the room. Myra stopped in front of the gate and studied it. She reached out and touched the metal. It was cold and rough under her fingers. She knocked on it in a few places, listening to the sound it made. She looked at the hinges, then at the frame, then at the floor where the gate met the stone. Commander stepped up beside her. His voice was tight with tension. "The mechanism is completely destroyed," he said. "The counterweights have turned to stone. The chains are useless. There is no way to lift it using the system that was designed for it." "Yeah, I can see that." Myra crouched down and looked at where the gate met the floor. There was a small gap there, just wide enough to fit her fingers. "I am not going to use the mechanism." "Then how will you open it?" Myra stood up and walked backward, 3 meters, 4 meters. She stopped and faced the gate. "The hinges are old," she said, "rusted almost all the way through. The frame around the gate is weaker than the gate itself. That is what happens when you do not maintain things for 500 years. She rolled her shoulders, stretched her neck from side to side, bounced on her feet a few times, feeling the lightness of this world in her muscles. "Your warriors tried to lift the gate," she said, "slowly, carefully, using steady force. That is the smart way to do it. That is the way that makes sense." She took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "But humans are not smart. We did not survive by being smart. We survived by being stubborn and angry and too stupid to know when something was impossible." Behind her, the chamber had gone completely silent. Everyone was watching. Medics stopped their work. Wounded warriors lifted their heads from the ground. Even commander and lieutenant stood frozen, their 4 eyes fixed on the tiny human girl. Myra set her feet. She had done this before, not on a gate but on doors, on walls, on anything that stood between her and where she needed to go. Her martial arts teacher back on Colony had called it a snap kick. You did not push. You did not press. You loaded all your strength into one explosive moment and let it fly. She thought about her family, her father's last words, "Be brave." She thought about the 3,000 people trapped in this mountain, the children crying in the dark, the mothers holding them close, the old people waiting to die. She thought about the Dominion ships falling from the sky like burning rain. And then she stopped thinking. Myra ran. 3 steps, that was all she needed. 3 steps to build speed. 3 steps to load her legs with power. On Earth, she would have been fighting against gravity the whole way. Here, she was almost flying. On the 3rd step, she jumped. Her body turned in the air. Her right leg came up and back, bending at the knee, storing energy like a spring being compressed. They saw what happened next in slow motion. Later, they would talk about it for the rest of their lives. They would tell their children and their children's children. They would write it in their histories and carve it on their monuments. The human girl kicked the gate. Her foot hit the metal just beside the main hinge. It was not a push. It was not a press. It was an explosion of force that came from millions of years of evolution on a world that wanted to kill everything on it. The sound was like thunder trapped in a box. The ancient metal screamed. The rusted hinges shattered into pieces. The frame cracked like old bone. And the gate moved. It did not just open. It did not just swing. It flew. The entire thing tore free from the wall and sailed through the air. 5 meters, 6 meters. It crashed to the ground inside the tunnel with an impact that shook dust from the ceiling and made the torches flicker. Myra landed in a crouch. Her right leg was tingling from the impact. She stood up slowly and looked at what she had done. The gate was gone. The tunnel stretched out before her, dark and open and free. Behind her, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. 40 warriors stared at the tiny human girl who had just done the impossible. Myra turned around to face them. She flexed her foot and winced a little. "Huh," she said. "Did not even break anything that time." Commander made a sound. It was not a word. It was just a sound pushed out of him by shock that his mind could not process. His mandibles clicked open and closed. His 4 eyes blinked one after another. "How?" he whispered. "How is that possible?" Myra shrugged. "I told you, gravity. Your warriors are strong for this world. I'm strong for a world that is almost 3 times heavier." She smiled at him. It was a tired smile, but real. "Here I am basically a superhero." She walked back toward the group, stepping over broken chains and scattered pieces of hinge. "The tunnel is open," she said. "How long will it take to get everyone through?" Answered, her voice was shaking. 4 hours, maybe 5. There are 3,000 people. "Then we should start now." Myra looked at the wounded warriors around her. "Can any of you walk?" Some of them nodded. Others tried to stand and fell back down. "Anyone who can move, help the ones who cannot. We are getting out of here." She turned to Commander. "I assume you have a plan for the evacuation." The commander was still staring at the empty doorway where the gate used to be. Slowly, like a man waking from a dream, he turned to look at her. "Yes," he said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. "Yes, we have a plan." "Good, then let us use it." Myra clapped her hands together, the sound sharp in the silent chamber. "Come on, people. The Dominion is not going to wait forever. Move." And they moved. The warriors, despite their wounds and their exhaustion, got up and started walking. The ones who could not walk were carried by the ones who could. Word spread through the fortress like fire. "The gate is open." The human opened it. "We can escape." 3,000 people began to move toward freedom. And in the gate chamber, scorch marks remained on the floor where a 19-year-old girl from a heavy world had changed everything with a single kick. The evacuation was chaos. 3,000 civilians poured into the tunnel like water through a broken dam. Mothers carried children. Sons carried fathers. The old held onto the young. The sick leaned on the healthy. Everyone moved as fast as they could, driven by fear and hope in equal measure. Myra was everywhere. She had started at the front of the line, helping to clear rubble from the tunnel floor. Then she had gone to the back to help the slowest families keep up. Then she had run to the middle when a section of the ceiling started to crack. She never stopped moving. She never stopped working. They watched her with wonder in their eyes. She picked up children like they weighed nothing. 2 at a time, one under each arm, running them forward to safety before going back for more. The children laughed, thinking it was a game. Their parents cried with relief. She carried supply crates that should have needed machines to move. Food, water, medicine. things that the refugees would need when they reached the other side. Myra stacked them on her shoulders and walked like she was carrying empty boxes. At one point, an elderly collapsed in the tunnel. He was huge, even by standards, 400 pounds of old bone and tired muscle. His family gathered around him, crying, trying to lift him. They could not do it. He was too heavy. Myra walked up to them. She did not say anything. She just bent down, got her arms under the old man, and lifted. His family watched with open mouths as this tiny creature, this fragile-looking alien, stood up with their grandfather in her arms and kept walking. "Do not worry," she said to the old man. "I have got you." He looked at her with 4 wide eyes. "What are you?" he whispered. "I am a human," Myra said. "Now hold on, the ground is rough here." Commander found her 2 hours into the evacuation. She was helping a group of soldiers move a broken cart out of the tunnel path. The cart was made of heavy metal. It would have taken 6 to shift it. Myra was pushing it by herself while the soldiers watched, unsure if they should help or just stay out of her way. "You should rest," the commander said. Myra gave the cart one final shove, and it scraped against the wall, clearing the path. She wiped sweat from her forehead and turned to face him. "I will rest when everyone is safe. You have already done more than anyone could ask, more than anyone could imagine." His voice was soft, almost gentle. "You do not owe us anything." "It is not about owing." Myra started walking again, heading toward the back of the line where the slowest refugees were struggling. "It is about doing what needs to be done." Walked beside her. His 4 legs made the pace easy for him, but he could see that she was tired. Her steps were a little slower than before. Her breathing was a little harder. "May I ask you something?" he said. "Sure." "Your species has no natural weapons, no claws, no fangs, no poison. Your skin is soft. Your bones are hollow compared to ours." He looked down at her small form. "How did you ever survive long enough to reach the stars?" Myra was quiet for a moment. They passed a family huddled against the tunnel wall, taking a short rest. She smiled at them and kept walking. "We were not always strong," she said finally. "Millions of years ago, humans were prey. We were food for bigger, faster, deadlier animals. We had nothing, no weapons, no armor, nothing but our brains and each other." She ducked under a low section of ceiling, had to bend almost in half to follow her. "But we learned," she continued. "We learned to make tools, to use rocks and sticks as weapons. We learned to work together, to hunt in groups, to protect each other." She picked up a fallen torch from the ground and kept walking. "And we learned something else, something that changed everything." "What?" "We learned to throw." His mandibles clicked in confusion. "To throw." Yes, it sounds simple, but it is not. Most species cannot throw accurately. Their bodies are not built for it, but humans can throw things with power and precision that is almost impossible. Myra mimed the motion, her arms snapping forward. "Rocks, spears, anything. We could hit targets from far away. We could kill predators before they reached us. We became dangerous." They reached the back of the evacuation line. A young mother was struggling with 3 small children, all of them crying and tired. Myra handed her torch too and picked up 2 of the children without asking. "Over time we got better," she said, walking again with a child in each arm. "Better tools, better weapons, better teamwork. The predators that used to eat us started to fear us. They learned to run when they saw humans coming." The mother stared at Myra with something like worship in her eyes. She picked up her 3rd child and followed. "And then there was gravity," Myra said. "Earth tried to crush us every day of our lives. It tried to break our bones and stop our hearts and drag us into the dirt. But we did not die. We got stronger instead." She shifted one of the children to a more comfortable position. The little one had stopped crying and was now looking at her with curious eyes. "Earth tried to kill us with animals, we killed them back. It tried to kill us with weather. We built shelters with disease. We invented medicine with starvation. We learned to farm. Myra smiled, but there was no humor in it. The universe threw everything it had at us, and we just kept refusing to die. Was silent for a long moment. They walked together through the dark tunnel, surrounded by refugees and the sound of shuffling feet. "And now you are here," he said finally, "on a world where gravity is weak and your strength is." "Yes." "Do your people know?" he asked. "Do they understand what they are capable of?" Myra shook her head. Most humans never leave Earth. They live their whole lives in heavy gravity, never knowing anything different. They think they are normal. They think everyone is like them. She looked up at the ceiling of the tunnel, where ancient stone pressed down from above. "It is only when we leave that we understand. Only when we come to places like this where everything is light and easy that we realize what we are." She met's eyes. "On Earth I am just a girl, average strength, average speed, nothing special. Here I am something else." "What are you here?" Before Myra could answer, there was a loud cracking sound from ahead. Shouts echoed through the tunnel. The line of refugees stopped moving. Myra handed the children back to their mother and ran toward the commotion, followed as fast as he could. They found the problem 50 meters ahead. A section of tunnel support had given way. A massive stone beam was falling, slowly, grinding against the walls. Below it, a dozen refugees were frozen in terror. If the beam fell completely, it would crush them all. Soldiers were trying to hold it up. 4 of them, their 4 arms straining against the weight, but the beam was too heavy. They were losing. Myra did not hesitate. She ran forward, ducked under the falling beam, and put her back against it. She pushed. The soldiers stared at her. This tiny creature, half their size, had just taken most of the weight off their arms. She was holding up a beam of solid stone that weighed more than a dozen. "Get them out," she said through clenched teeth. Her voice was tight with effort. "Get everyone out now." The soldiers moved. They grabbed the frozen refugees and pulled them to safety. 1 by 1, 2 by 2. The stone beam groaned above them. Myra held it. Her muscles screamed. Her bones ached. Sweat poured down her face and dripped onto the ground. This was not like kicking a gate. This was sustained effort, fighting against weight that wanted to crush her into the floor. But she had spent her whole life fighting against weight. This was just more of the same. The last refugee was pulled to safety. The soldiers looked at Myra, waiting. "Go," she gasped. "I am right behind you." She gave the beam one final push, buying herself a second of space, and dove forward. The beam crashed down behind her, missing her feet by inches. Dust filled the air. Stone fragments scattered across the ground. Myra lay face down on the tunnel floor, breathing hard. Every part of her body hurt. Hands reached down to help her up. 4-armed hands, strong hands. Commander lifted her to her feet and held her steady. "What are you?" he asked again. His voice was full of wonder. Myra looked at him. She was exhausted. She was bruised. She was covered in dust and sweat. But she smiled. "I am human," she said. "This is what we do." The survivors have reached the Allied lines 3 days later. 3,000 civilians walked out of the mountains and into the safety of friendly territory. They were tired and hungry and scared, but they were alive. Every single one of them. The Dominion forces, left behind at the empty fortress, searched for days trying to understand what had happened. Their scouts found the broken gate deep inside the mountain. They found the tunnel leading to the other side. They found the marks in the stone where a massive metal door had been torn from its frame and thrown across the room. They never found out how. Myra became famous after that. She did not want to be famous. She was uncomfortable with the stares, the whispers, the way people stopped talking when she walked into a room. Soldiers bowed their heads when they saw her. Children pointed at her with wonder in their eyes. Old people reached out to touch her as she passed, as if she were some kind of holy object. She was just a girl from a colony world. That was what she kept telling everyone. She had not done anything special. She had just kicked a door. But nobody believed her. Stories spread across the galaxy. The human who opened the gate of, the gravity child who carried elders and held up mountains, the tiny creature from the heavy world who saved 3,000 lives with nothing but her body and her will. Other humans heard the stories too. They were confused at first. They did not understand what was so special about what Myra had done. Lifting heavy things was normal. Running fast was normal. Being strong was normal. It took time for them to realize that it was only normal for them. 2 weeks after the evacuation, Myra was sitting alone on the outer wall of the refugee camp. The sun had set hours ago. The sky was full of stars, bright points of light scattered across the darkness like scattered seeds. She heard footsteps behind her, 4 feet on stone. She knew who it was without looking. "May I join you?" Commander asked. "Sure." He settled beside her on the wall. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They just watched the stars together. "I wanted to thank you," said finally. "Before you leave, my people owe you a debt that can never be repaid." Myra shook her head. "You do not owe me anything. We owe you everything." His voice was firm. 3,000 lives, mothers and children and elders, an entire generation of our people saved because you were there. Myra did not know what to say to that. She pulled her knees up to her chest and wrapped her arms around them. The night air was cold against her skin. "My people will remember what you did," continued. "For generations, perhaps forever. Your name will be carved into our monuments. Your story will be told to our children. When speak of courage and strength, they will speak of the human girl who kicked open the gate of. I just did what needed to be done." Yes, turned to look at her. His 4 eyes reflected the starlight. "That is what makes it remarkable. You did not hesitate. You did not ask for reward or recognition. You saw people in need and you helped them." He was quiet for a moment. "We have a saying on," he said. "The warrior who faces impossible odds has already won, for they have conquered fear itself." He clicked his mandibles softly. "I never truly understood those words until I watched you run at that gate." Myra was still looking at the stars. Her face was hard to read in the darkness. "Can I tell you a secret?" she asked. "Of course." "I was terrified." She turned to look at him, and her eyes were wet with tears she had been holding back for weeks. "The whole time, every single second, when I kicked that gate, when I carried those children, when I held up that beam, I was so scared I could barely breathe." Stared at her. "Then why did you do it?" Myra wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Her voice cracked when she spoke. "My father died saving me. He put me in that escape pod and pushed the launch button, and then the Dominion blew up our house with him inside." A tear ran down her cheek. "The last thing he told me was to be brave." She took a shaky breath. "I do not know if I am brave. I do not feel brave. I feel scared all the time. Scared of dying. Scared of being alone. Scared that the universe is cold and dark and does not care about any of us." She looked back at the stars. "But there were people behind that door who needed help, and I could help them, so I did." She shrugged, a small motion that somehow contained everything. "That is just what humans do. We are scared all the time and we do things anyway." Was silent for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was soft. "I think that is the bravest thing I have ever heard." Myra laughed. It was a wet, broken sound, but it was real. "Maybe, or maybe we are all just too stubborn to know when to give up. Perhaps those are the same thing." They sat together in silence after that. The stars turned slowly overhead. Somewhere in the camp, a child was laughing. Life went on. After a while, Myra stood up. She stretched her arms above her head and yawned. "I should sleep," she said. "My ship leaves tomorrow." "Where will you go?" She thought about it. Her home was gone. Her family was gone. She had nothing left but herself in the stars. "I do not know," she admitted. "Somewhere, anywhere, there is a whole galaxy out there." She started to walk away, then stopped and looked back at the commander. "Yes. Take care of your people. They are good people. They deserve to be happy." He bowed his head. "I will. And you take care of yourself, Myra. You are one person, but you carry the hopes of many." She smiled at him. It was a sad smile, but also a peaceful one. "Goodbye, Commander." "Goodbye, human." Myra walked away into the darkness. Watched her go, a small figure against the vast night sky. She looked fragile, breakable, like something that should not survive in a universe full of sharp edges and hard surfaces. But he knew better now. He knew what hid inside that small frame, a strength forged by gravity and stubbornness and millions of years of refusing to die. He looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the light of familiar suns, there was a heavy world called Earth, a world that had spent billions of years trying to crush everything on it into dust, a world that had failed. The creatures born on that world were spreading across the galaxy now. They did not know how strong they were. They did not understand what they could do. To them, carrying heavy things and running fast and breaking down doors was just normal life. But the rest of the galaxy was starting to understand. Made a promise to himself, sitting there under the cold stars. He would tell this story to everyone who would listen. He would make sure the galaxy knew about the humans, about their strength, about their courage, about their stubborn, impossible, gravity-forged refusal to give up. Because one day, knew, the galaxy would need them. When darkness came and hope failed and all seemed lost, the galaxy would call for help. And the humans would come. They would come scared and tired and unsure of themselves. They would come doubting their own strength, not understanding what they could do. They would come as they always came, these strange creatures from the heavy world. And they would kick down the gates that stood in their way. Just like they always had. The stars burned cold and ancient above the refugee camp, but to Commander of, they had never looked brighter than they did that night. Because now he knew something he had not known before. The universe was not empty. The darkness was not absolute. Somewhere out there in the vast reaches of space, there were forces of stubborn hope, forces that refused to give up, forces that had been forged in gravity and fire and pain. Humanity was one of them. And that changed everything.